G'day. Welcome to episode number 9 of the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast. We're your hosts, the Ipers. I am Scott Iper, and with me is my wife, Ty Iper. This podcast will bring to you people in the hobby who have made an impact on us creatively, whether it be artistically with data, improving husbandry, writing field guides. Today, we're stoked with us to have Peter Rowland. G'day, Pete.
G'day, Scott. G'day, Ty. How you going?
I'm good, Pete. How are you?
Terrific. A bit chilly down here in Holbrook. We've had a bit of snow recently, not in town, but in the snowfield. So, yeah, we're feeling the brunt of it at the moment. But other than that, I'm good.
I think the older you get too, the worse you feel the cold. Oh, hang on.
We won't go there.
Yeah, that sounded like a shot. Sorry, it totally wasn't.
That's a three-letter word.
Oh. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, Pete?
Sure. So I am an author and a bit of a photographer. Primarily an author. I've written a dozen books on Australian wildlife and 5 scientific papers. And I was really lucky to have the opportunity, I think, to work at the Australian Museum for a long period of time. And that's really sort of set me on a path to where I am today. I'm just loving life and loving writing.
Awesome. Where did you grow up, Pete? Do you think that affected who you became?
Yeah, so I was born in Australia, but parents moved to England when I was 18 months old. So I grew up in the south of England, a little township called Brixham, which is in Torbay, and it was absolutely the best place to grow up as a kid, especially a kid who had an interest in nature. And I was a short bike ride from the beach, from the cliffs. There was woodlands. There was all sorts going on, and it was just a magical sort of picturesque area to grow up in. And I would constantly roam country lanes looking for birds and other bits. And there wasn't too many reptiles there, but a few birds. I absolutely was so lucky, and I think definitely set me on a path of wanting to pursue something in nature and really occupied my time, I think, because, you know, as a kid, we can go down a few different paths. We could turn into mischief. We could get interested in the outdoors, or we can become an introvert and sit in our rooms. And I think, luckily, I got that middle path of just wanting to be outdoors.
When you were a kid, how did you answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
So I don't know if I ever got that question, but I'm sure if I did get it, I said that I'd want to be in a zoo, working in a zoo, because I used to be a really good reader when I was younger, and I'd read all sorts of different books from different authors, but one of the ones I really loved was Gerald Durrell, and he obviously set up his own zoo and bits and pieces. And I used to go to the local zoo a lot. I loved it. It was one of the places I'd really try and escape to whenever I could, because I could see emus, which reminded me of the fact that I was actually Australian, not English. So I think I would have had that connection to a zoo. I probably would have said I wanted to be in the zoo.
Awesome. Are you a night owl or an early bird, Pete? When do you get most of your work done?
I'm terrible, actually. I'm both. Because I work so many different jobs, I have a full-time job that I do. I also run my own company, and I do software development for a online compliance platform, as well as some bookkeeping services. So when I knock off my day job, I tend to come home and sit in front of the computer and try and get as much done as I can. And I absolutely hate going to bed if I'm not tired.
Same.
So I tend to eke every minute I can out of a night. I just love to just collapse in the bed when I'm dog tired.
And regret it in the morning?
Yeah, well, it's exactly that. But I do hate, if I'm not tired, I hate going to bed just because I've got to get up early the next morning. But yeah, sadly, I'm very bad at balancing my own health, I suppose, as far as sleep's concerned. So yeah, definitely a bit of both.
It would work fairly well, though, being into birds and herps. You know, birders have got to get up bloody early in the morning to get that dawn chorus, and herps are out on the roads late at night. So, best of both worlds.
True. It's very true. Yeah, there's not too much herb activity down here at the moment. They're frozen solid by the time they get out.
This is the time of year, mate, that you do a bit of rock rolling and all that sort of stuff if you're so way inclined. It's certainly tough. Or you just decide to go north. Most normal people do. And, you know, we've got some mates that are over in Bali at the moment that are running around chasing snakes in Bali and all the rest of it. I'm sure them jumping back on the plane today and going back to Melbourne and Sydney and wherever else they're from is going to be a very rude shock when they get off that plane. So,
definitely.
I'll be ditching those singlets, that's for sure.
The old bintang singlet might be getting put in the cupboard. Have you been chasing stuff overseas, mate? I know you've been overseas at least a couple of times, but did you go over there birding and herping or chasing butterflies or mammals or just running around in the bush in general?
I want to sort of give the intro. I was lucky that I worked at the museum, and it was a long time ago now, but I did get lots of opportunity to go around Australia, plus overseas. So with different departments, it was birding, herping, whatever. But since the museum, because I'm very much a generalist, so I just sort of make the best out of any opportunity I've got. So if I'm, say, in Japan, for instance, and I'm just walking in the woods, I'm just trying to find as much as I possibly can. So, yes, I definitely have, and I love looking for anything new, whether it be scales or feathers or, you name it, I'm looking for it.
What's happened in your career, Pete, that you weren't expecting?
I'm not sure. Like, I suppose there's a fair few things that come along, good and bad. I think as a writer and a photographer, you tend to, I suppose, get really excited that something happens, like you might win an award or your book might get Book of the Week or something like that. And it's something that you're not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get, unfortunately, negative reviews on some titles that also you're not expecting because you sort of put your heart and soul into everything you do. So I don't think it's been anything landmarkish, but definitely a few goods and bads along the way.
What have you done professionally that you're most proud of? Was it a book? Was it a photo?
Winning
the Whitley Award was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was definitely an unexpected thing, and it was definitely something that I am quite proud of. Mm-hmm. I was part of a series called the Green Guide series, and the series won the award. So, I was really fortunate to be able to be part of that initial series when it came out. I think there's a few things, Ty. I think that being on a team, I was over in New Caledonia with Ross Sadlier and discovering a new genus and species of skink. I think that's pretty up there.
Yeah, definitely.
So the Cynoscincus aurantiacus, or the orange-bellied burrowing skink, that's definitely a highlight from the herp side of things. I'd say that's got to be up there.
Do you have a mentor?
I do. I've been very fortunate. And it was a golden period when I worked in the museum, so there were some really cool people there. So Walter Bowles would have to be my absolute mentor as far as giving me the opportunity to work at the museum, encouraging me to come back as a volunteer, working alongside him for 20-odd years and really sort of helping me find my feet and find a bit of direction. But I was also blessed to be able to work with people like Tim Flannery was there at the time, Glenn Shea was there at the time, Alan Greer and Martin Robertson. And not that I had a lot to do with Hal, but Hal Cogger was there at the same time. But it was just, it was a golden time. But Walter, he's the guy. He's the man.
That's awesome. Is there 3 photographers that you think our listeners might like to check out?
It's tough, isn't it? Like when I do books, and you guys know the same thing, you need help to get photographs from lots of different people. And there's some really great photographers out there. And I think everyone, obviously, in their own field or at the right time, right place or whatever, everyone takes really great pictures. Consistently, I think, through my dealings with things, people like Steve Parrish, he's been awesome. He's a good mate and a really, really great photographer who's contributed to the industry for so many years. But I think he's moved into this next phase of doing more art with his photographs, and it's just exceptionally stunning. I think they're just absolutely amazing. So definitely check out Steve, his Nature Connect site.
He's also doing
obviously.
He's also doing a lot of training now. People want to learn how to take photos of herps or birds or mammals, frogs, fish, insects, the whole box and dice, and even habitats and that sort of stuff. He's really teaching people that are new to it in a fairly succinct way how to minimise making some of those classic errors I suppose. I know they say in art there's no such thing as an error, but sometimes you're only afforded a few seconds at a time, and if you can take those images because you know a little bit about the rule of thirds or backlighting or what f-stops are good to start off with and things like that, when you're out on a seabird trip or something like that and you've only got fleeting seconds at the time, you might be the difference between getting the shot and not getting that shot, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I was lucky that back in 2016 I went on a masterclass with Steve, and we had a local wildlife breeder and handler, and we just had access to so many different animals and, yeah, lots of great pointers from Steve. So definitely worthwhile going ahead and doing something with Steve. I was going to mention that you guys too, obviously, Scotty, especially your work features in the books heavily. Angus, who you've had on the show. But, yeah, it's unfair, I think, to pick out three, but yeah, definitely those are the standouts.
Well, we've gone with three, but we can go with more if you want. I don't care if you want to bloody nail a few more out there.
Look, honestly, the list of people who have helped me over the years, which I'm so grateful to, it'd be as long as my arm. It'd be like me reading the yellow pages out.
Yeah, and you know what? The same goes for us too. Like it's... what do they say? It takes a village. It takes a whole village to build a city, so to speak, or put something out. I completely cocked that line up.
You were going to use the raise the child one, and I was like, "Yep, you got that right."
And putting out a book or anything like that, it's never just the efforts of the author. It's also all of these people around you that really help you put that together. And I really encourage people to sit back and have a look at the acknowledgements in the books, because it's important that the people that have contributed to it do get gratitude, because as an author, as we all know, it's so important to have those people giving us that assistance.
Yep, definitely. And it's the peer reviewers, photographers, everybody. But actually, another person who you and I both know, Scott, P.T. Hirschfield, one of her images is going to be featured on the cover of the second edition of the Dangerous Creatures book when it comes out. And I was out to dinner with her and a partner the other day, and she was absolutely stoked to see a picture of the cover, to be able to see her image. She's helped us. But I also love the fact that she's just absolutely delighted to be able to get a cover shot. So
I'm a visual person, so I do go by the cover. If the cover doesn't interest me, I won't pick it up. If the cover interests me, I'll pick it up and look through it. And to me, photos really help sell the book.
Yeah, it's interesting. How many books have you worked with John Beaufoy on? Because that's where we got to know each other. It was through the John Beaufoy Naturalist Guide series.
Yeah, eight. Yeah, Scott. So, yeah. Actually, just to sort of digress a little bit from there, it's actually a full circle thing. So my very first book that I wrote on my own was through New Holland. Yeah. And actually, John Beaufoy was manager of New Holland, Australia at that time. Not that I knew him. And it wasn't until I started writing with him recently that I found that out. So realistically, I've done 10 with John, because I had 2 earlier.
It was funny. I think you, from the way we got together, is you put out something on social media saying you were chasing some photos of some stuff for your reptile book that you did with Chris Farrell, I think, from memory.
Yep.
I sent you some photos and I said, have you considered maybe throwing together a Dangerous Creatures book? What do you reckon? And I think the message came back to me fairly quickly to say, well, maybe let's put it to John. And then I think a day later we were starting to lay out the way we were going to run this bloody next book. So it certainly happened bloody quick, didn't it?
It definitely did. And that was a whirlwind, because I think it was 2017 I signed the contract to do the reptile book and the mammal book I was working on at the time, and the Megaspots book at the time, the bird Megaspots book. And then you and I worked on the Dangerous Creatures. You took the lion's share of the frog book we did together. And then there was an insect book on the go at the same time. It was just like an absolute mind-numbing 3 or 4 years it was.
It blurs, doesn't it, when you're that busy?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I can't remember. I don't think we'd even finished writing the Dangerous Creatures book at the time. I remember sending an email across to John going, you know how we're doing the frog book? What do you reckon about a Snakes of Australia book? What do you think? And he goes, oh, that'd be great. So I said, I'll write it with Ty. And he's like, okay, you reckon you can have it out in the next 12 months? I'm like, oh, shit, this is not good. And then, sure enough, off we went. And so you went silly with the insect book and then the second editions and all of the bloody rest of it. And then we did snakes and then lizards.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like you put the pen down, so to speak, does it?
Definitely not. I was doing a talk at a library in Peru, and I had, as part of the talk, I thought I'll just quickly add up the number of words and images and bits and pieces that went into all those titles during that period of time, and it was just staggering. It was 500,000 words and whatever it was, I forget off the top of my head, but about 3,000 images, and it was just, it's a crazy time.
But too, it's not just writing the book. If you don't have the images, you've got to locate the images, and then you've got to wait for the person to get back to you, and then like have a backup in case that original person doesn't get back to you. It is a lot more time consuming than it actually looks.
Yeah,
I think too that's
Totally
tougher
agree.
when you're dealing with absolute complete books as well, versus the Naturalist Guide series. The reptiles is an indicative introduction, I suppose, to the reptiles of Australia. The birds is the same, lizards is the same, insects is the same, butterflies is the same, because the constraints of those books is that they fit a very particular format. They can't cover every single species because there's more species than there are spaces, so to speak. But then when we've been able to do the more complete versions, which are the ones that I tend to prefer personally, things like the frogs and the snakes, where you do cover every species, that presents its own set of challenges as well. You don't have the problem of, do I include this one and not this one? But then you also have the problem of then chasing down that information on those particular species, which makes it tough.
Exactly, yep.
How do you decide the species that you include, Pete?
Because the majority of tourists and the majority, I suppose, of the population are in the eastern part of Australia, that we always put a bit of a focus on what are people more likely to see when they visit that region of Australia. So it's roughly an arc from, I suppose, the Gulf of Carpentaria around through to about Adelaide, on that sort of loose arc through that region. And it sort of tends to satisfy, I suppose, the majority of the audience or the target market, that people are going to be sort of visiting those areas, and what are they more likely to see when they're on those trips.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, we had a...
Speaking of trips, sorry.
No, sorry, we had a slightly different take on it when we did the lizard book. We sort of said, right, what are going to be found in the urban centres of Perth, Darwin, Alice Springs, and then the eastern states as well, and said, right, these are the ones we've got to include because they're most likely to be found by people. And then we wanted to pick out the showstoppers, so to speak, to make sure they were in there too. And then have sort of those indicative representatives, whether it be a whole heap of velvet geckos or sliders or something like that, and made sure we included some of the more obscure stuff in there too for the people who were so inclined.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
It's hard when there's a lot of choice.
Yeah, true. It's harder to decide on what to leave out. Exactly.
What's the favourite trip you've ever done?
Been lucky to do so many good trips, but in recent times, probably Japan, because it extends so far north to so far south. It's got such a diversity of animal life. I think I really loved the time I spent there, even though it was quite a short time, and it's a place I'm going to go to again. Good assemblage of mammals, a stack of birds, about 600 odd species of birds. I think there's 130 odd species of mammal there, and I think 70 odd reptiles, something off the top of my head anyway, but it's just got such a diversity. It's so good.
How long were you there for?
I was only there for about 10 days on the first trip. Been planning, trying to get the maximum out of the next trip. So starting up north in Hokkaido and trying to get down far as south as Okinawa and things like that. So, yeah, lots of planning, but definitely a good taste in 10 days for sure.
They got the largest salamanders in the world in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
And from what I understand, you can actually go and see them if you get onto the right people. There is a possibility to see some of those things. Be a pretty amazing thing to see a 1.5 metre long axolotl style salamander. That'd be a pretty nuts animal to look at.
Oh, bloody oath. Yeah. No, I'd be keen for that.
You know how to upset Scott now, don't you? Selfie. What's the favourite animal that you found on a herp trip? Or any trip, actually. Sorry, I forget you're not just a herp.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the orange belly burrowing skink before. I suppose that was a standout just because it was completely unexpected. As far as the favourite animal, as far as a standout's concerned, it's a bit of a funny story, I guess. When I'd completed the Megaspots book, I took a quick trip across the north and down the west coast of Australia, just double checking like data and GPS coordinates and all the bits and pieces. And I hired a car out of Broome, went out to the bird observatory, and then decided to head up the Cape to a place that I'd put in the book. I'd put it in there as being a good spot to go and see beach stone curlews, which are a wading bird. And drove along, got the car as far as it could possibly go, and then we had to walk the rest of the way. Walked around the corner to where the GPS coordinates should be. I looked up and there was a pair of beach stone curlews standing on the rocky outcrop, and I've gone, oh, well, we know the book works. So that's a memorable one.
If only everything was that easy.
Yeah, exactly. X marks the spot. There you go.
Craziest thing you've ever done while you've been out?
Probably going back to museum days sticks in my mind. I used to pick up stuff as I was travelling and doing things like that and bring it back to the museum. So there was a couple of instances. Probably the most memorable was coming back from New Caledonia, and we'd been collecting all sorts, geckos and skinks and bits and pieces. And we were taking tissue samples and kept bringing back preserved specimens, but also bringing back live specimens. And they all had to go into carry-on. So in my hand luggage, I had about 30 Chinese containers with different apps in. And, of course, you had to go through have you got something to clear? Yes, I have these. And so you unzip your bag. And the customs guy was just going, oh, my God, how cool are they? And then he called all his mates over, all the other customs people to come and have a look at all these lizards. And I was with Ross Sadler on that trip, and I said to Ross, what would they have done if they'd confiscated them? The paperwork hadn't been in order or something or other. And he goes, oh, that's all right. The Australian Museum's a quarantine station. They would have come to us.
At least you wouldn't have had to carry them there.
Yeah, that's right. The other one, which was probably memorable for a different way, was I was up in Atherton, Tableland, and I found a road-killed lesser sooty owl. And I knew that the museum didn't have hardly any in the collection. So I grabbed it off the road. And, of course, being so hot and tropical up there, it started to go off a little bit. And so, I don't know, one of those moments, I wrapped it in newspaper and then put it in the freezer. And, of course, it didn't freeze. And I'm sitting on the plane on the way back from Cairns, and all I could smell was dead owl. So, yeah, that's probably the two.
Oh, I'm not sitting next to you on a road trip. How do you balance life and work, Pete?
I don't know if I do it very well at all. I think, as I said earlier on, I am a bit of a workaholic. I know when I have to take a break, and I think it's just getting a break from the displays. I'm not a social media person or anything like that, so I do find it easy to get away from a computer when I'm not working, if I know I have to. But I think it comes down to me, it's more looking after myself. As long as I keep healthy and keep a good diet and things like that, then I know I cope better. Mm-hmm. But like anyone, it all gets a bit too much sometimes. So you just got to get out in nature and grab the camera or just go for a walk and get out. So I definitely try and make a point of doing that as often as I can.
Gus brought it up the other week too. All of us are the same. Our work is also what we do for pleasure as well, or enjoyment or whatnot. So it is a very hard line.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love research. I love dealing with the photographs. I love editing and doing whatever. But, there's nothing beats actually getting outdoors in nature and even if it's a walk or sitting there having a coffee and watching the sunset, whatever it be, as long as you're outdoors, I think it keeps you sane.
Definitely.
So is that the way that you sort of develop your inspiration for working on other things, is to get out there and just a bit of a mind reset and all the rest of it, even though you're striving to find your target species or whatever it might be? Certainly in our case, we find that you get that inspiration while you're out there. You get that relaxation, but you're going as hard as hell while you're out there anyway at the same time. So it's not like you're relaxing, but it does recharge mentally and reminds you why you enjoy it so much, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and I love that ability, I suppose, to be able to go out and find something new. And as I said, because I'm not really a specialist, I've got a bit of diversity as far as what I'm trying to get images of. It's never a dull moment. It's not as if like you come home disappointed with no pictures of anything at all. You're always coming home with something, and I think that's great.
Definitely. And we've all learned the hard way that you never know when you're going to need that picture.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
It also makes it easy when the taxonomists decide to split species A from species B when it's a cryptic species that's being split primarily on the basis of genetic markers. Mm-hmm. So that certainly makes it a bit nicer when they come out and you get a couple of armchair ticks out of it.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Japanese culture, and I look at a lot of Japanese history and readings and things like that, and they've got a great phrase that's wabi-sabi, and it's basically means that nothing's perfect, really, and there's beauty in imperfection. And if you look at nature, nothing's really perfect. There's no two trees that look the same. Birds have worn feathers, snakes slough their skin, all sorts of things go on that make an animal or a plant not perfect. And I think that if I try and bring that back to me, that I don't have to make everything perfect. Yes, I've got to dot all the I's and cross the T's when I'm writing a book or something like that, but I don't try and put too much pressure on myself to seek perfection, as it were. I sort of try and cut myself a little bit slack. So, yeah, that's probably the only words of wisdom. The other ones, which were, again, coming back from my museum days, my mentor and boss at the time, Walter Bowles, told me, look it up for yourself. There's a library there. So that's probably my other words of wisdom. Don't rely on other people to tell you what's what. Get in and have a look and find out for yourself.
I thought you were going to say freeze ours properly.
Yeah. Yes. I learned that the hard way, but yeah.
I had a similar thing for a guy that I knew for many years when I was younger. One of the things he said to me, he goes, don't be a fucking parrot, in the sense that don't just repeat something else that you've heard somewhere or you've read somewhere. Go back and look it up and then look at the science that formulates said opinion and apply testing to it to see if it is actually whole true or if it's been potentially a miscommunication. And sometimes things do get, it's like a game of Chinese whispers that doesn't quite run all the way through. So,
Yep, true. And that's why you've got to go back to that source reference document, as you know. If you can find the reference, don't go off what someone else has written about that source document. Read the source document for yourself.
Or better yet, go and look at the holotype yourself and see if the scale counts are right.
True. Yep.
But I think you can liken that to every day these days. Don't just repeat what you've seen on social media. It can be so good for a lot of things, but it can also be quite detrimental in other ways as well. And research it yourself. Don't just trust what you heard somebody say 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. And there's some really great authors out there. I know they get all their stuff reviewed and everything like that, but there's a lot of other authors, especially on social media or online, that it's just half of it's made up.
What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you, Pete?
That I'm a vegetarian.
I love you a little bit less now.
Living in Holbrook is funny, actually, because this is like a really big sheep and cattle area, primarily cattle. I can't get a block of tofu at the local IGA here, so I've got to go to Albury. But
That's funny. The first time that Gus ever came over for dinner, because Gus is a veggie as well, I may have omitted to Ty to explain that Gus was a vegetarian, and so we had cooked up chicken burgers for dinner, and served it all up, and then Gus turns around and goes, I'm sorry, I'm a vegetarian.
And you know how sweet Gus is, like he was all, oh, I don't want to be an inconvenience, but...
Just eat the bun and the salad.
So I was in the shit over it because I should have explained that he was a vegetarian, and it completely just slipped my mind.
Yeah, I'm not 100% strict on it. I go and visit my parents. Yeah, occasionally Mum will serve up a bit of fish or something. Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
I'm glad I know now. I do make a wicked veggie burger.
Oh, cool. I'll look forward to it.
Well, I won't forget it, that's for sure.
That's it.
Share with us one thing you think is true that no one agrees with you on.
That Nikon's better than Canon.
I 100% agree with you there.
There's plenty of people out there that'll agree with you there. I won't, but...
What about vegetarians are better in bed? I don't know.
I don't know. I can't yay or nay that one for you.
Yeah, I talk a lot, so there's probably lots of things coming out of my mouth that people don't agree with.
Pete's comment threw me for a fucking 6, which is kind of funny. Are there any exciting projects that you're currently working on at the moment, Pete?
Yeah, actually, I've got lots of my own stuff started. I'm a very bad project master as far as my own stuff. Like I'll start writing something, think, yep, that's what I'm going to be doing next. And then next thing is I'll start something else and I'll start something else. But where I'm working at the moment, I'm working with a great group of people at Holbrook Land Care here, and I'm working on a couple of revegetation guides. So I am revamping a couple of old re-veg guides with a group of people and a website to go along with it. So it's making, I suppose, for climate ready as well as updated information, increase the range of the 2 books that I'm working on, and should be out hopefully by the end of August. So yeah, that's a really enjoyable project. It's sort of working again in a team and doing something that's going to be a good reference source for people doing habitat restoration and revegetation work.
Awesome.
So are you publishing those? You're doing the whole box and dice yourself, eh?
Yeah, I'm building the InDesign files at the moment and spent the day doing that, and I'm building the website to go along with it. Because I'm not a land care, I suppose, practitioner and haven't been involved a lot with flora stuff. So relying heavily on a lot of people to give advice and to assist as far as the actual content is concerned. But I'm building the books and building the platform as well.
You said you had a fair bit to do with software design and stuff like that. Have you ever considered doing identification apps for animals or plants or anything like that, and sort of looking at producing electronic field guides as opposed to doing the printed version? I know personally I like a printed book. I like something that the battery doesn't die on it. But, some people out there, particularly some of the younger people, are really interested in digital media as a form. And I suppose at the same time, if you can carry a whole heap of field guides with you in the palm of your hand, that's probably not a bad thing either.
True. And I think as long as it's able to be downloaded to a device, so if you're out of data range or something, that at least you've got access to it. I think I was interested, and I still am interested. I did a bit of research about it. The funny thing is, though, that everyone I spoke to they basically said, who looks at natural history books or wildlife books? Who'd read one of those if it was an e-book? But I think it goes a lot more than that. You can do a lot more. You can have embedded videos. You can have 360 vision on an animal if you wanted to spin it around, for instance. You could have call identification. You can have lots of things in a digital platform. What that physical, tangible copy that you've got in your hand, if you get away from the fact that you're not trying to just replicate that book, you're trying to make it a more complete guide. So you can add a lot more, and then you can have links for references to other information and things like that. So I think there's a market for it, and I have been interested in the past. It's sort of not on the scope right now, but yeah, definitely I think that it'll happen. It'll happen very soon.
Just not enough time in the day at the moment, is there?
No. And my programming skills are quite lacking in as far as the way things are going now with AI and stuff. You can do so much more, I think, if you had the training and the skill set to make it more complete. And I do know people that are good enough to do that sort of thing. It's just, I'm not in that camp. Mine's quite basic.
I think, though, too, like, I'm older, so I enjoy opening a book over an app.
100%. My escape sometimes, if it's a rainy day and I can't go anywhere and I don't want to be sitting in front of the computer, I'll sit in the front veranda and brew up a coffee and grab a book and just sit there and read. And it's so immersive. It's just an amazing experience, and it's something that I've had since I was a kid. So, no, I totally agree, Ty. A book is a book, and it'll always be a book. It's great.
A book, if you're really into it, can take you away. You can forget your troubles. You can forget where you are. You just, like you said, immerse yourself in it. And if it's a really good book and it's really well written, you are that character. Like, you are living that book or that story at the time.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think the older we get, the more, I suppose, learned experiences sort of alter our perception on reality. So we probably focus a little bit too much on what we know, whereas as a kid, we could escape into this world. And it depends on the writer and the writer's ability to be able to drag us into that world and leave the door open for our imaginations. And, I think my most memorable reading experiences were when I was younger, but definitely these days I still love a good book. So,
yeah, I've still got the books I was reading as a teenager. I read as an adult level, but I've still got those books, and I will still reread them because I love them so much.
Yep. I actually reread Winnie the Pooh the other day. It's really good.
That was not what I was expecting.
That's just between us, isn't it? No one else is listening.
No one else is listening.
That's good.
So what species of bear is Winnie the Pooh?
Yes. Versus something.
A pentless species.
Maybe it's a patronym. You got Robinson-y or something like that in there, so maybe it's Ursus Robinson-y.
Yeah, could be.
100-acreensis or something like that, maybe.
Honeyensis.
You reckon? Apis, it could be having apis, so you could have a honeybee reference to it.
Good.
We briefly touched on it before, and then we were just talking about honeybees, but we've got the second edition of The Dangerous Creatures coming out. Meant to be out in September at some point in time, I believe.
Yeah. And that's going to be really exciting when it comes out, because we did that one back in 2018. I remember when I was over in the UK and got handed a copy of the book. So that one's something that it's been really enjoyable working on the second edition with you and Ty, and being able to bring that out, incorporate a whole heap of new images and stuff. So really looking forward to that coming out. I think it's something that's going to go really well.
I like the fact that we were able to fix a couple of the little errors in there too, which was nice.
Yeah, that's the good thing about second editions, isn't it? As I said before, there's always the best intentions, and we all strive for the best. But the reality at the end of the day is things get missed or things change, of course, since first editions come out as well. But it's really satisfying to be able to do that. But also being able to refresh and update a whole heap of images is also wonderful as well.
Everyone likes new pictures, don't they? It becomes tough to go, right, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And choosing some of the species, I know when I've had conversations with people about that title, I was sort of like, well, why did you include horses in there, or why are honeybees in there? And then when you explain to people that honeybees and horses kill more people than all of the other either large or venomous species that are in Australia, it kind of throws them for a sense. They're expecting that snakes are going to be right up there, or even spiders or something like that. And the reality of it is that the humble old bee that we see in the backyard kills more people due to anaphylactic reactions than basically anything else from a venomous point of view. And the amount of people that are injured falling off a horse is very significant as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if I ever told you, Scott, when I was over in the UK and I got the initial copy, I was travelling around and the rest of the family were going to come later on. I was travelling with a mate for a bit. And I ended up going down to the mouth of the Thames. I forget the name of the place there. There was an airport and we were staying in the hotel next to the airport. And we went up to the bar, me and my mate Brad, and we were sitting in the bar. And I don't know if it was our Australian accents or something, we were just chatting to each other, but the table behind us started talking about Australian spiders. And they're English people. And one of the persons turned around and said, not to us, but turned to the rest of the table they were chatting to, that redbacks can jump. And I just looked at Brad and I felt like just turning around and saying, hang on, I've got this book in my room. You know, if you want to buy it, you'd actually find out it's not true.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hal Cogger and I, we'd been out to his study site out at Round Hill, and we were sitting there at the pub having a burger and a beer after running around looking at sand dragons in the morning. And we were sitting there quietly and this person comes in and goes, oh, what are you up to? And I said, not too much, just out here looking at some lizards and stuff. And he goes, oh, okay, well, it's a good thing you're not looking at those inland taipans because they'll chase you. And I looked across at Hal and Hal looked across at me. We both smiled and we just went back to our food and we said, yep, I'll chase you, all right. That was about it. just left it because there's no point. You never quite know what the other people are in the bar that they're mouthing off to sometimes. A bit of a laugh.
Exactly. That's right. And the other good thing about the book too, and on those lines, is dispelling myths, because there are a lot of myths out there and untruths spread around. And I think being able to work on a book together and highlight some of the facts is very rewarding.
It was certainly good to be able to put to bed the white-tailed spider thing, particularly in the second edition where we were able to sort of clean up that little bit of language in there. While they are venomous and they can inflict a somewhat painful bite, the necrotic wounds that they get is completely unrelated to the spiders themselves.
That's right. Yep.
And I love the learning along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And the good thing about that book is that we had so much involvement from specialists that you couldn't help but learn. It was such a great group effort as far as gathering all the literature and getting peer reviews and things like that. And because it covered so much of a diverse spectrum of different fauna species, it was imperative that we had that input from people. But it was definitely a learning experience on the way.
I must admit it was funny. Obviously, fire ants are here in southeast Queensland, and we actually had 2 nests in our front yard. It was interesting getting stung by them without realising I was getting stung initially, and then having the pustules come up sort of 48 hours later. It was quite incredible. I was like, oh, okay, so it does actually turn into pustules like that, like we say. That's interesting. So, and then same thing with regards to the fire ants' nests themselves. It was like, well, hang on, I better go get the camera out before I get rid of this nest because I need to get some photos for the book.
Yep, yeah.
The quickest way to rile him up, Pete, is he went, oh, there's fire ants in the front yard. And I'm like, no, they're not. He's like, I've written a book on this, I know.
That's right. Stand up yourself, Scott.
Yeah, the problem is Ty knows that I didn't write that section of the book. So,
oh, you reviewed it?
I reviewed it, but I didn't write it. It's interesting, maybe for the listeners, the way that you divvy up. I think we did the dangerous creatures was pretty easy. I said, I'll do the vertebrates and you do the other ones, and I'll chase down images, and we did that, and it didn't work too badly, but at the same time, I didn't quite realise how many bloody fish and all the rest of it you had to go and chase. It certainly wasn't easy.
No.
Very different to what you usually do because your main thing before that was the reptiles, the birds and the mammals. To jump into doing fish and invertebrates and stuff like that, that must have been quite the learning curve.
Fish, definitely, yeah. I'd always had a real interest in inverts. Yep. Dad was a pest controller and I was always fascinated with insects especially, but also a whole heap of spiders, because we used to keep funnel webs and redbacks and all sorts of different displays and whitetails and stuff. So I was always interested in them, but hadn't academically studied any of it. So, it was really, really steep learning curve. But again, thankfully, I knew a lot of people through the museum and that I was able to get information and get people to review stuff. So it was a good experience.
I think it's good to step out of your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah, I think, it keeps you fresh, but also you have to. There's only so many books you can write on birds, or so many books you can write on mammals and reptiles and things like that. But you've got to sort of reinvent a little bit, reinvigorate, make it a bit more interesting. But I think as a person, you get a bit stagnant doing the same thing over and over. So to test those boundaries and expand yourself, it definitely keeps you fresh.
How did the Megaspots book, the birding Megaspots book, come about? Obviously, that's quite a different style to the Naturalist guides that you've done and the species as count style books that you've done. The birding Megaspots book is quite an interesting idea.
From me, it was because when I used to travel around Australia and travel like doing surveys all over the place, I would always keep lists, and I was an avid list keeper. And I remember thumbing through some old stuff way back in about 2014, 2015 maybe, and thinking to myself, I should do something with this. So I started to collate a bit of data and put things together very slowly, and I wasn't really looking to write a book, but it was like I was building the information. And then I realised I had big glaring holes in pelagic stuff, so ocean birding. And so I signed up for a couple of boat trips. And where I was living at the time in Wollongong, there was a really good one run by Sosa out of Kiama. And so I booked in to go on one of those. And as I was travelling out, I was sitting next to a guy who introduced himself as Ding Li Yong. And Ding Li and I just sort of got chatting about different things like that and what we'd done and things. And he was across studying at ANU, looking on that particular trip. He was looking for whales rather more than birds, but which, funnily enough, he now works for BirdLife Australia, right? Actually, on the way back in, we were talking about books and the subject got into things. And I said, look, I'm researching for a book I'm doing, or at that stage, something I'm doing on birding hotspots, as it were. And he said, that's funny. He said, I've just finished the 100 best birding sites to Southeast Asia, and my publisher is John Beaufoy. I can give you his name if you want. We'd be interested in doing that sort of thing. So that's where that actually started, the whole journey. But yeah, it'd been something I've been working on for a long time.
You've mentioned quite a few countries. Is there anywhere you haven't been that you'd like to go?
Actually, I'm going there in October. I'm going to Canada, and I was supposed to go to Canada in 2020, but of course, like many other people, plans got changed. My mum's Canadian and all of mum's side of the family are in Canada. So it's been a country that I've wanted to go to for a long time from a personal level.
Yeah.
But also when I was young, I found my great-grandfather's slide collection. And that was one of the things that really sort of got me interested in photography. They travelled all over, but he had pictures of cardinals and squirrels and all sorts of bits and pieces from America and Canada. And so I've always wanted to go across and photograph the wildlife over there. So that's the next place.
I'm stoked for you because Canada's one place I'd really like to go to as well. Scott's all like, it's cold. Why do you want to go there?
But it's a good time of year. It's fall over there. So apparently it's supposed to be really pretty and not too cold. So
Yeah.
Remember their idea of not too cold as a relative term.
Yes, exactly.
You're just a wuss in your old age, sweetheart.
Well, what did we have the other night? We had the heater and the fire going at the same time the other night.
We didn't, you did.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it is what it is. And we're under a blanket as well.
You were under blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no snow here.
I know, but sometimes it feels like it. That wind blows, goodness.
Oh, Pete's got your back, babe.
Yeah, that's it.
One thing
Us co-authors got to stick together, mate.
One thing I wanted to touch on with you, Pete, is obviously you've been taking photos for a fairly long time, like myself, and you've got the photo library that you're doing as well. How did you go about the transition from slide film and all the rest of it and slides over to digital? And then how have you gone about actually converting all your slides across into a digital format as well so you can use them?
Well, the transition, I was an early adopter. Actually, I'll tell a bit of a lie there. My dad was always an early adopter. Like, he always had early mobile phones, all the other bits and pieces. And he bought a Kodak, I forget the model number. It was one of the early digital cameras. I loved the fact that you could be able to take, the res was really bad back then, but it was so cool to be able to take a picture and look at it straight away. I'm not the vinyl advocate saying it always sounds better than a CD or a digital. I mean, you just can't compare digital images to old slide film. Yes, they look great on slide, but I went around Australia in 92 and I took 58 rolls of slide film.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back and I probably chucked about 60% of them away because they were soft or something had gone wrong or whatever. So the fact that you can look on the back of a camera and go, I need to take more pictures of this, or, yep, that's good enough, I can move on and take pictures of something else. It was a no-brainer. But it did force me to shift from Canon to Nikon because I didn't like the early Canon digital cameras. So that's when I made the shift to Nikon. And also Canon changed their lens mount system, so therefore it was time to start again anyway. But early on I did use a mob to scan in all my slides, not all of them. I think I sent them 1,000 odd, and I got 1,000 scanned in. But I have several more thousand sitting in plastic tubs out the back, and I actually just bought a Kodak slide scanner about 3 months ago with the intention of doing it, but it's still sitting on the table out the back, so I haven't quite got there yet. But
that
I'm working on it
again.
I'll have a chat to you about it because I went through, scanned a heap of slides, and I went about 8 different ways with it to find probably the best way to bring slides together. And in the end, one of the best scanning tools themselves is actually just a decent quality DSLR and a macro lens, and setting up a light source behind the slide and diffusing it and taking photos of the slides with the macro lens.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Give me you get a really, really good result. You'll get something that'll be as good quality as what you're going to get effectively, because at the end of the day, right, a slide scanner is just taking a digital photo of a slide.
Yeah.
So,
and thankfully, I saved my old light box because I did have an old light box back in the day that I built for all my slide sorting, and it got chucked on the box trailer to go to the tip about 2 years ago, and I go, oh no, I might need that again.
Well, there you go.
Anyone under 30 is going to have to Google all these terms.
I suppose that, right. The one question I've got though, I mean, you said 58 rolls of slide film. I know the feeling well and truly. It used to cost more in regards to going on a trip. You used to spend more on film and then getting your slides mounted afterwards than what it did to actually go on the trip itself. It was like highway robbery. But for me, I lost some incredible photos on one roll of a Centralian blue tongue and a couple of other bits and pieces. What were the most hurting losses, I suppose, if you will, that you went to take photos of and you either cocked up the lighting on it or overexposed, underexposed, ruined them by opening the door, or the film hadn't been rolled back in? What was the painful ones that never worked out?
Geez, how long's the podcast?
Surely there's one in there, though, that really gets at you.
Probably the elegant sea snake, I suppose. I've never seen them since, and I think that was one that, through either bad photography or just the age of the slide, by the time I got it scanned in and everything, it was just not worth a pinch, as they say. So that's probably the key one.
Yeah, those ones that you never see again really hurt, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm flashing back now to when I used to work at Rabbit Photo and the stuff that used to come in. Oh, my God. Hang on, we just need to put the curtain up. We can't have this roll coming through where the public can see it. There was a Coles pretty much 2 shops down. And I think a lot of people got their normal rolls confused with their sex rolls, and the sex rolls they'd accidentally drop into us instead of sending away with Coles. And yeah, good old times.
I bet that'd make for some interesting enlargements when you put those stickers on.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have to put a sticker on it saying this would make a great enlargement. And I remember one guy, he was really cocky when he dropped his roll off, and he was quite arrogant and rude. So I picked, say, a photo where it could be mistaken for a cold breeze coming through, and I stuck the sticker on that photo that said this would make a great enlargement. He couldn't get out the shop quick enough.
That's gold.
There was a photo album out the back.
You'd be cancelled for that these days, bro.
Oh, yeah, you'd be in trouble for that these days. The good old days. Political correctness.
So I suppose with that, I do have a question, and we ask this of everybody. And I suppose it's something in your case, it might be something you might have witnessed. So have you ever witnessed or experienced misogyny within your career? And in your opinion, what do you think could be done to help stamp it out?
I have, not in the photography or book writing realm, but I did work in transport for a long time, and I think that's one of those industries. I'm not going to generalise, but in my experience, yes, there was a lot of, I suppose, well, it was a male-dominated industry, of course, so therefore it was very old-fashioned in that regard in its treatment and its behaviour towards women, and I think that's a sad reflection. I think things are changing, and working in the science or in the land care realm as I am at the moment, it's really pleasing to see there's a lot more women in that industry, and it's a lot more accepting and professional in that regard. As far as what can be done about it, I'm not qualified to really answer the question, but I think as long as open, honest conversations and respectful, regardless of gender or sexual orientation or anything, I think it's just got to come down to being more accepting and knowing that everyone's different, really.
Yeah. Treating people how you want to be treated probably is a pretty good way to deal with it to begin with, isn't it?
Well, that's definitely very true, Scott. More than that, I think it's not just how you want to be treated. I think it's just what's right. I mean, if we look back at the book writing we talk about in this industry, we've gone through that history of females having to publish under a male name. But it's not that old. The Bronte sisters are probably ones that spring to mind. They had to publish under Bell's Brothers or something was the name. But even J.K. Rowling, she was encouraged not to use her first name of Joanne on her books for fear that she wouldn't be as well accepted as an author, which is why she published under J.K. Rowling. So it's not something that's that old, and it's still quite recent, which is very sad. But I hope with this current generation and future generations, hopefully, it's a thing of the past.
You worked with Rachel Whitlock on the butterfly book and also the insects
and butterflies.
I mean, obviously, she's quite the entomologist in her field to do those sorts of things.
Yep, and would run rings around me as far as that's concerned. And I've worked with a lot of co-authors, and I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to work with different co-authors, male, female. It was really especially wonderful to be able to work with Rachel because, firstly, she was my wife's niece, but also someone who's did a degree in entomological research and her first book, and to be able to assist her to do that. But that was as far as my involvement, as far as entomology is concerned, because, as I say, she just run rings around me.
So we have a new segment, Pete. It's called 60 Seconds Under the Basking Spot. Are you ready?
Oh, I'll give it a go. What do I win? That's right.
Scott for the night.
No.
He'll cook you a veggie burger. I'll give him instructions. Okay, Disney or Warner Brothers?
Disney.
Oh, good man. Star Trek or Star Wars?
No, it's got to be a Trekkie, I suppose.
Digital or old-fashioned book?
Old-fashioned book.
Four-wheel drive or sports car?
Four-wheel drive.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
Coffee or tea?
Is there a time limit? I gave up coffee for like 40 years or 30 years, I'd say. And I used to drink tea like it was going out of fashion, but now I just can't get enough coffee. So I'll go coffee.
Order or spontaneity?
Order.
Savings or spendings?
Spendings.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Summer or winter?
Oh, winter.
Risk taker or conservative?
Risk.
Beach or forest?
Forest. Manual
or auto?
Manual.
Radio or podcast? Does pineapple go on a pizza?
These are fighting words. Yeah. No, not these days.
No, it does not, does it?
Bullshit.
Doesn't go to hand.
Bullshit. Pineapple always goes on a pizza, you heathens.
Doesn't go to hamburger either.
No. What's the one takeaway that you want the audience to get from this episode, Pete?
Oh, hang on. Sorry. Before we do that, I've got one more. Blues or maroons?
Blues.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
All the way.
It's only a border thing. It's nothing personal.
I figured that because of tonight, because we're doing it while the Origin's actually going on, we probably should throw it in there.
Yep.
Yeah, good call.
No, blues. To answer your question, Ty, as far as a key takeaway, I've given a lot of talks and it always delights me when people come up and saying, I've been working on a book. And I'm glad I came to your talk because I've never had the courage to get it printed or get it evaluated or something like that. So I think one thing I've learned over the years is, and I think you probably get the gist from what we've been chatting about as well, it doesn't have to be your area of expertise. As long as you've got an interest in it and you want to do it, I think everybody has a book. I know it's an old-fashioned saying, everyone's got a book in them, but I think it's so true. And everyone can take good pictures, but there's lots of great pictures available from different other people out there. If you reach out, there's a lot of photographers who are more than willing to help. I think you just got to be a little bit brave and put yourself out there. There's always going to be a critic, and that's just human nature, unfortunately. But I think if you're keen and you got an interest, just do it. It mightn't be perfect, but it'll be yours.
Definitely. That's really good advice. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to say before we close out?
No, I think it's just about having fun. It's been a really great chat, and thanks very much for having me on. I think it's been awesome to be able to talk. But I think just have fun with what you're doing. Make the most out of every day, and you don't have to solve all the problems in the world at once. Just get out there and have fun when you can.
Try not to take life too seriously all the time, yeah? That's
Exactly.
what I've got to try and remember.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'm a bit of a grump about that sort of shit.
Yeah, but I think we all get to that, Scott. It just depends what we've got on our plate at the time. But as we mentioned early on, get away from the computer screen, get away, just go out, hug a tree or watch a sunset. Life's always better after that.
I think too, though, you get that caught up with a contract due or something like that. You don't think about those things. I know I don't.
True. And deadlines are the killer, really. And we've known that with different titles we've worked on. Collectively, we've all had deadlines. As Douglas Adams always said, which is one of my favourite sayings, is I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise they make as they go flying past. I think you're right. It's hard when we've got the pressure put on us, but by the same token, it's not that much pressure that we can't just walk outdoors and look at a butterfly or something.
Yeah.
Or turn a rock over and look for a skink.
I think too, though, it's hard to see that sometimes when you're that stressed out. You want to focus on the project in front of you, get it knocked over, and then move on to the next. And you forget to stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
Yeah. And being a person who's struggled with mental health in the past, I get that. I think we do try and put too much on ourselves to try and get things finished, but it's a long game. We've got to look after ourselves first. Otherwise, there won't be a second book or a third book or a fourth book or whatever. It's more about the turtle, not the hare.
Yeah, definitely. And where can our listeners find you, Pete?
As I said before, I'm very bad at social media. I do have a couple of channels. Just you got to look up PRPW or Peter Rowland PW, which is a photographer and writer. My website's probably the key thing, so www.prpw.com.au, but I'm trying to get a bit more involved in the YouTube space, so check out YouTube if you can and look me up there and follow the links.
Thanks for listening to the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast. A massive thank you to our guest, Peter Rowland. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. Usually, we will be releasing our podcast monthly, so make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on an episode. Give the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast a like on Facebook so you don't miss any updates, giveaways, or guest announcements. The links discussed in today's podcast will be in the show notes. And remember, always trust your creativity. It's intelligence having fun.